Chinese manufacturer Teclast just recently entered into the laptop market, and this year they have released so far 2 new laptops. One's called the F7, and that's an Apollo Lake laptop, but this is the better model of the two. It's called the F6 Pro. It's powered by a Core M3 7Y30, that's 7th generation from Intel. We haven't seen the 8th generation chips yet. Hopefully they will be coming out this year, but no word on that from Intel. It's got 8GB of RAM that's running dual channel. It's also clocked to 1866 megahertz. We have 128 gigabytes of storage. Now it is upgradable because they've added this little access hatch on the bottom, which is a good move by them. It means it is very easy for you to go ahead and install up to 512 gigabytes. Just make sure it's the 22 by 42 size and SATA 3 spec, and you should be fine there. Now the hinge on it is a convertible one, so we can flip it right around and convert it into a tablet that weighs 1.4 kilos. Now in my unboxing I said, hey, 1.4 kilos is a little bit heavy, but really it actually isn't. It's not bad at all considering my Jumper EasyBook 3 Pro and Apollo Lake laptop weighs the exact same weight as this, so they've done well when it comes to the weight. Now the screen on here can be held up like this in a presentation mode. You can also flip it around and use it in what's called the tent mode. I don't tend to use the tent mode too often. I prefer presentation. It's really good to prop it up. So then it's just like having a Windows 10 tablet, 13.3 inches that's stuck in a stand, or you have it sitting in a stand. Now you will notice that because of the design of this hinge, that when you tap on the screen, just like any convertible, that it's going to have a little bit of annoying wobble. You do need to adapt, so eventually you will end up just tapping very lightly on the screen. Now the touch response of the screen is quite high, it's very sensitive, and it's accurate, so that is good. You don't need to tap hard or anything. So once you get used to that, then it won't be too much of an issue, that wobble. Now the screen is an IPS, as I pointed out in my unboxing. It's not fully laminated. So what does that mean? That means that there's a gap between the digitizer glass and then the IPS panel below of approximately 2 millimeters. Means it's a little bit more reflective. It also means that the blacks will not look very dark. They look more grayish because of that panel there. It has a pre-applied screen protector. The glass that's covering over it, yes, it is glass, it's not plastic, is only soda lime glass. So it is prone to scratches a lot more than the likes of, say, your Gorilla Glass or Dragon Tail branded scratch resistant glass. So you have to be a little bit extra careful with that. I would keep the screen protectors on it. Up the top there is a 2 megapixel webcam. I'll give you a sample of that later on in this review. So moving down now to the keyboard, and just above the keyboard, I wanted to point out that what looks like 4 speakers is in fact, I feel, only 2 by the sounds of it. And then we have apparently 2 mics, but these mics produce quite a bit of static. I'll give you a sample of that along with the webcam later on too. So the keyboard layout is good, it's spacious, it's a great keyboard to type on. It's got 1.4 millimeters of travel. I do like it. We have an extra column of keys here dedicated to your page up and down, home, end, and delete keys. The arrow keys some people may have an issue with, so you can see they're split. They're only half-size buttons, so that could be a problem for some people. Otherwise, we have shortcuts here for everything you can really think of, and even a dedicated button for print screen. Now, the touchpad is good, it's precision. So we've got the Windows Precision drivers, and we've got full control over the gestures. We also have a fingerprint reader in here from Goodx that works really quick. This is very fast, it unlocks, and I haven't had any problems with its reliability. It unlocks literally 10 out of 10 times. But the touchpad, as you can see, is quite small. Now using it, my time using it now for a week, I find it's fine. I'm having really no issues with it, but occasionally my finger will end up going to where the fingerprint reader is and it doesn't register then. So that's a little bit of a problem. So the build quality overall is really decent. It's all made out of an alloy, and as I mentioned, it's 1.4 kilos. And the hinge is quite stiff too. I don't see that loosening up anytime soon. It certainly doesn't feel like that. Now they should have made the cutout along the front here, if you see my unboxing video, a little wider there. They could have cut in a bit more because it is a bit of a pain to open this laptop because you can't really get your fingers in there. It takes 2 or 3 attempts. So that's a minor little design problem. So on the right hand side, you'll see the power button. Now I do have a slight complaint with this power button, that the positioning of it means that when you pick up the laptop, you will often trigger that. Now there's a very quick and easy fix. That is in Windows settings. I've done it now. You can see I'm tapping the button, nothing is happening. I've set it to do nothing. So problem solved there. We have a micro SD card reader. Now this reader unfortunately is only wired up via a USB 2 hub. So that's limiting our speeds. You have to use USB 3 to get full speeds out of any micro SD cards using a reader. So USB 3 port there, full size. We have DC in, it's 12 volts, 2 amps. And then the 3.5mm headphone jack that does have a minor little bit of static over it. The audio output's not 100% clean. Volume seems okay to it. I ideally like it to be a little bit louder, I often say that, but it's not bad apart from that static on there. And then on the left hand side we have a Type-C port. Now this does work with all hubs I've been testing. Originally it didn't, but when I updated my drivers, and make sure you plug in power to the hub first, then to this, it will charge, output, display 4K up to 30 Hz and data all at the same time. Micro HDMI out there, that will go up to 4K 30 Hz as well, and another USB 3 port. You would have noticed there is a little status LED here, so this will light up red when charging and turn green eventually when it fully charges in approximately 3 hours and 41 minutes in my testing. Now one thing I won't be covering in this review unfortunately is the stylus. It's still not shipping at the time of this video and is probably a good week or two away, and there's a lot of people asking me, where's the review, where's the review? So please check back in about a week or two for this stylus review. So I did run a few benchmarks as I always do in my reviews here so we can gauge the kind of performance to expect. So right here is my Geekbench 4 score. Now this is the score that I first got. Now if you keep repeating it, it will slowly go down a little bit as the processor starts to heat up. But my best run here was 3,120 for single core score, and then getting near close to 6,000 on the multi-core score here. So scores that are more or less around other Core M3 7x30 devices. Graphics score, well this is using OpenCL, is 16,258. And Passmark version 9, a score that is close to 2,000, so 1980 was the total Passmark rating here. Now my score will be a little bit higher because I do have a slightly faster SSD that I installed, 256GB one, which these right here are the internet speeds I managed to get. So I've got a 300 megabit line here at the moment before I end up losing this. But these speeds are a little bit slower than what I would expect, downloads that is, from other devices with this same chipset. So it's the Intel 3165 dual band wireless AC. It should be a little bit higher there on the downloads. And then lastly, a 3D Mark test here I did. So this is CloudGate 1.1, got a score of 5,210. Now looking at SSD speed, so these are going to be faster here because I'm using a Transcend 256GB drive, so I can fit in all the games and applications and files and things for my review. The 128GB one will have similar speeds in terms of reads, well a little bit slower, around about 500. And then the write speed sequential will probably be about 170, 60 or 180. Quite a bit slower because it's only 128GB, that drive. Alright, so benchmarks are one thing, but they don't really say a lot, do they, for general use? And I can tell you that it's quick and snappy. So finger scrolling here in Chrome, I've got quite a few tabs open. The response time and that scrolling there, as you can see, is very smooth. It's fast, it's fluid. Switching between applications, so I do have Photoshop here running. By the way, Photoshop runs fine as long as you're not doing massive, huge megapixel edits with like 10 layers or more of 50 layers, then it will run perfectly fine for that. Now, video editing, you can do a little bit on the Core M3, but stick to 1080p. Anything over like 4K or 1440p will start to drive you crazy because it will bog down and get really slow, especially when it comes to encoding times. However, I recommend using something like Power Director that supports Intel's QuickSync. So encoding times will actually be surprisingly fast when you do export those videos. But something like Premiere Pro, which I have, I won't run it on this machine, but yeah, it does get really quite slow. So I've got a 4K video here that I'll reload. This is just to demonstrate how it works with the wireless. Will the wireless keep up? So 4K, this is my Mavic drone review. Skips ahead quite quick. Takes a little while to load in there. And enable the stats here. Let's go full screen, and you can see that drop frames, absolutely nothing. The buffer health is around 15 seconds, and the connection speed is excellent there as well. So it will keep up and stream 4K video. As you can see here, perfectly fine without any issues. Now, I've got a few other apps there running in the background too as well, but overall I find that the performance of the Core M3, the 7Y30, is similar to older generation Core i5s, like from 2 generations ago. Now onto battery life. I've been monitoring this over the last week. I've been using this laptop, and I think it's okay for a Core M3. It's definitely not the worst. It's certainly not the best either, but I'll give you some examples here. So 2 hours of 1080p YouTube streaming, I lost about 20%. So this is not a bad result at all. It seems because of the tweaks that Teclast have done to the display, lowering the brightness a little bit, that it pays off in terms of battery life. So it can actually do web use for around about 8 hours, as you'll see with some of the results here that I can show you. So my final result, just to show you here, I managed to get elapsed time there, almost 8 hours of web use in Chrome. I had between 6 and 8 tabs opened the whole time I was using it. And there's a combination of streaming and just general work there. Now, when you start to multitask and do a few other things, that battery life will drop off significantly and lower down to around 6 to 6.5 hours maximum. So that is what I'm showing you at the moment, the best kind of battery life that you're able to achieve. This was with 30% brightness. Now, the charging rate will be up to around 14 watts, which is not bad. That's from both the DC or the Type-C charging, and it will take about 3 hours and 41 minutes to fully charge the battery. So move on now to have a look at some gaming. This is Project Cars running in 720p lower settings, and it is barely playable. Look, 20 frames per second at the moment. So not really desirable frames per second. Ideally you want this over 30 frames per second, but you can play it, but only just. Now this is a game that an Atom or an Apollo Lake Celeron N34 wouldn't even be able to play with even 5 frames per second. So it is quite a bit faster, the Intel 6015 HD graphics. Counter-Strike 1080p on low settings. Let's see how it performs. So I was hovering around 30-40 frames per second. You'll have to excuse my horrendous gameplay. I do not last long in this game at all. It's a new record for me. I have not been killed yet. I told you so, I'm a hopeless aim. Now much lighter games like League of Legends here can run on the high setting in 1080p with very good frame rates here. It's hovering around 78. So that is not bad at all, considering that this has no active cooling. It's all passively cooled, there is no fan. And because it is a tablet, you can play Windows Store tablet games. Although it is a little bit uncomfortable and rather heavy to play for extended periods like this. But performance is good here in Asphalt Extreme. So on to thermals now. Just how hot does it get? So I've been gaming and probably for about 30-40 minutes now. It will reach and peak about 86 degrees here. Now this is after 4 hours and 42 minutes of me using this laptop non-stop here. So your average temperatures you can see aren't bad at all, around 44. Now that was with web browsing, but when you start to game and push the GPU and the CPU is when it starts to get hot. But these temperatures are perfectly fine here. It does run into power limits, as you can see right here. That has popped up. Power limit throttling will exceed it. Yes, but no thermal throttling there whatsoever. Let's have a look at the surface temperatures now. Okay, so around the keyboard, the top left-hand side gets up to 33 degrees. The palm rest here is about 28 and 24. Now, where it does heat up a little, I've noticed, is on the rear of the device. which we'll have a look. So just near the SSD, that can get quite warm. That's up to 34 degrees. And then over the side here, that's 27. And up to about 31. Now, the highest I've seen it get is 38 degrees. And this is still perfectly fine within what I would call normal temperature ranges for a fanless core M device. Now for a quick webcam sample. Straight away you will notice that the dual microphones that it apparently has is producing quite a bit of static. You can hear that constant hiss in the background, and I do find that to be very annoying. Hopefully there's going to be a fix for that we can figure out on the forum. There's also been one user that apparently claims that they have been able to reduce the hiss to more of a hum and almost fix that. So I'm going to have to look into that a little bit more detail. But the camera itself is 2 megapixels, 720p, 30 frames per second quality. It is passable for Skype, I find. What annoys me the most, of course, is that static. So for Linux users out there that are interested in installing Linux and running it on this machine, I'll run through what is working. Basically everything apart from the touchpad and the fingerprint reader and the sound. So there is no feedback when I use the sound. It seems to be outputting via the 3.5mm headphone jack. So you have to figure that one out and then figure out the drivers. Touchscreen, that is also working, and the screen brightness control is working. Wireless is working too. Now for a quick peek at the internals, we can see we've got a large copper heatsink right here, the battery pack's in the middle. The hinge is screwed in place, which is good. There's metal behind the keyboard, so that's the backing behind it there to press it up real hard. That's why the keyboard doesn't have any flex in it, so that's good to see. Build quality overall looks pretty good, not too bad. I can see some kind of like messy little bit of glue right here with some of those cables, but that's not too bad. Things are taped in place. It's probably just to stop that from coming unplugged. Now it looks like there are 2 mics in here, but without digging around further, I can't 100% confirm that. Another thing to note too, that modders out there, if you want to put a thermal pad over the top here, remove this pad on the back and it will transfer heat to the rear housing. Increasing the temperatures, lap temperatures will increase of course, but it should drop temperatures a good 5 to 10 degrees, and then you can increase power limits or slightly boost the performance. But overall the internals do look good. Oh, one other thing as well, you could remove one or if not both of those magnets if you have trouble opening it up like I sometimes do. It might be a wise move there. So the question that's probably on your mind right now if you have made it this far in the video is, should I buy it or should I not? I think this is a good device and I would definitely be happy, and I am happy with the $449 I paid for this. So I feel it's good in many aspects, and it has some cons like any device, but to me they're only minor. So the cons that I covered, the microphone, that's probably the worst of them all because it has that static. It's rather annoying. However, it looks like we're going to have a software fix, or at least to reduce that from a loud hiss down to a hum. And that is on the forum of my website. So have a look under the Teclast F6 Pro section for the fix of that. And the touchpad is a little bit small. The fingerprint reader sometimes gets in the way, but overall it's a good touchpad using this. The keyboard as well is really good. I like the key travel. It's comfortable. The feedback it has, that's great. So the screen, 230 lux of brightness. That's not going to win any brightness records when it comes to displays. Definitely not. Now, a lot of people would see that figure as a deal breaker, but I have been using this in brightly lit environments, like right here in the studio, and I can make out the screen, which is currently, I think, on about 50% brightness, perfectly fine. I've been using it indoors, and I haven't really had any issues at all with the screen. However, if you plan to use this in a super brightly lit environment, for example, like you're going to use it outdoors, I don't really see who would want to, with a non-laminated display and that kind of brightness. Forget about it. It's going to be very difficult to make out this screen. The design just adds another level of practicality to the device. Devices like this with the hybrid design, so you can flip it around, you convert it into a tablet. Although I won't probably be using it so often as a tablet, it's really nice to always have this option here, and I like to see more devices coming out now with this particular design, because I do believe it has a bit of a future, because tablets perhaps are dying off. Things like this maybe are replacing them. So it's great to be able to put this into the presentation mode. For example, if you're on a long haul flight, you stick this on the tray table in front of you and you get the keyboard out of the way, and it's just like using a tablet there. And with a 13.3-inch screen, great for watching movies with a traditional 16:9 aspect ratio. So overall, yes, it gets the thumbs up from me. Might not be perfect, but I feel if you can pick it up for $449, then it's a great price for a device like this. If you haven't seen my Cube Thinker i35 review, that's up here now, and my latest reviews. Now check out the Cube one because it's a similar kind of device spec-wise, but it has a much better fully laminated screen, but it doesn't have the hinge that goes right back. The Thinker hinge, I think, tops out about there it was, which is a slight annoyance. But it's an interesting device, so have a look at that. And also, hopefully I will see you back for the review of the stylus on this device. Bye for now.